Do you think prisoners should have a 401k?
I think that, my opinion is not what we're asking about. I'm here to provide information and context, basic social safety
Do you think
net.
prisoners should be entitled to paid vacation?
Workers should be entitled to workers' compensation.
That was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana questioning Jennifer Turner, who is a human rights researcher at the ACLU. This exchange happened in May, but I recently came across the clip and thought it would be worth sharing. During an earlier part of the hearing, Turner was advocating for not only prisoners to be paid, but for other benefits beyond that, which led the way for Kennedy to ask some logical questions about how far this goes in terms of what benefits and how much. Considering that Turner is coming from the ACLU, she answered the questions exactly probably as you would expect her to answer, which included her attempting to deflect questions about whether or not prisoners should have access to a 401k. She also attempted to deflect a question about whether or not prisoners should have access to paid vacation. And finally, she said that prisoners should be able to unionize, and she said that they should be eligible for workers' comp. On that note, I have to say, if you thought Clown World had peaked, just wait until they have prisoners out there protesting and picketing for better wages.
Ms. Turner, I want to be sure I understand your testimony. You think prison labor should be voluntary? Is that the ACLU position? Yes. Okay. And do you think,
I'm sorry, my microphone was off, if I may answer on my own.
Yes, ma'am. Did you answer yes?
My answer is that the majority of incarcerated workers wish to work, but it is vital that that work be truly voluntary and that there is no place for forced labor in the United States. Yes.
Okay. And you think that prisoners who do work are underpaid? Is that the ACLU position?
They are underpaid or unpaid. In your state, many of those workers are unpaid.
Okay. Let's take a maintenance worker, which I assume includes people working in the kitchen. What do you think the starting pay ought to be in my state for a prisoner?
Workers should be paid the minimum wage of the state where they live. And there are true fiscal arguments in favor
minimum
of
wage? Is that
minimum wage, yes.
Do you think prisoners should have a 401k?
I think that, my opinion is not what we're asking about. I'm here to provide information and context for the committee.
Do you think prisoners should be provided with a 401k?
If I may answer, the reality is that if we paid incarcerated workers a minimum wage, it would have net fiscal benefits for the United States.
I'm trying to ask you
workers would be able to pay.
About benefits.
Yes.
Do you think they should be provided with a 401k?
Workers should be eligible to earn into the social safety net. If they're paid minimum wage, workers will be able to earn into Social Security benefits to support themselves. That does not include a 401k, but I'm talking about basic social safety net.
Do you think prisoners should be entitled to paid vacation?
Workers should be entitled to workers' compensation when they're injured or maimed on the job, which happens all too often.
So they should be covered under our workers' comp law?
Yes, absolutely. Workers are working in dangerous conditions. Should prisoners be allowed to unionize? Yes.
You believe that too? Okay.
It's vital that workers
should prisoners be provided with health insurance, matched by their employer?
Workers should be covered by workplace health and safety guarantees. Incarcerated
people. But what about health insurance?
Incarcerated people are already guaranteed a basic standard of health care. That is already guaranteed by U.S. law.
Health insurance.
They're already guaranteed that, even though the medical care they receive is usually substandard, and when they're injured on the job, often receive substandard care. They are already guaranteed by law basic health care protections while incarcerated.
Mr. Wynn, what crime did you commit?
Second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder.
Okay. Who did you murder?
Jeffrey Owens.
Jeffrey Owen?
Yes, sir.
Why did you murder him?
I was a 16-year-old kid. Jeffrey, me and DeWan had a confrontation, and Jeffrey was an innocent bystander.
Okay. So you shot Jeffrey by accident?
Yes, sir.
You intended to murder somebody else?
I was defending myself against DeWan Lewis.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, you shot at Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
And you missed?
Yes, sir.
And you hit Mr. what was his name?
Mr. Jeffrey Owens.
Mr. Owens?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Owens have a mother?
I think everybody born in the world has a mother.
Yeah. But was his mother alive when
Yes.
you killed him?
She's still alive.
Okay. Did Mr. Owens have a father
Yes,
who was
sir.
alive when you killed him?
I don't know about his father's.
You never checked?
I mean, as a prisoner in Louisiana, you cannot check on those
Did
type of
Mr.
things.
Owens have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, he did.
Okay. How many?
I don't know.
Okay. You mentioned that your mother cried when you were sent to Angola. Do you know how Mr. Owens' mother felt? Have you ever reached out to them?
May I ask you a question, Senator?
Well, answer mine first.
I would answer yours.
Okay.
And you asking me questions that an incarcerated person cannot answer. I don't know what Jeffrey Owens' mother did, but human anatomy tells me that, yes, his mother had to cry because she lost a son that she brought into the world. Okay. Yes, his father, if he was living, he should have cried. His brother cried.
Did you ever reach out to Mr. Owens' family?
Sir, you're a senator from Louisiana. If a person like me that was incarcerated reach out to any person that's a victim, that's a sentence. You go to prison for that. And I was already in prison, so that's a different sentence.
So you couldn't
by law, you cannot reach out to the victim or the victim's family.
Well, I will tell you, I came today because I thought we were going to have and I hope we were going to have a rational discussion based on empirical evidence on a very complex, nuanced subject. Frankly, I'm disappointed. You know, Ms. Turner, Professor, I just don't think these emotional arguments are at all productive in us trying to solve a problem. People are in prison for a reason. I believe in free will. I get the impression that the ACLU position and the professor's position, I don't know about Mr. Wynn's position, is that you feel sorry for these folks who are in prison. I wish they weren't there too, but they're there for a reason that really hurt somebody. In Mr. Wynn's case, he murdered somebody. He actually killed somebody by accident. He meant to kill this person and he shot this other person. He could have killed two. And I'm kind of disappointed. And I just don't think we're going to solve this problem with emotional arguments from people who don't believe in free will and responsibility. That's just my point of view. But I thank you all for being here. And I'll say this, Professor, I was struck, Professor Armstrong, you keep talking about coercive context, that the prisoners are working in a coercive context. It's prison. Prison is a coercive context. And people are there for a reason. And I think you're in la-la land if you don't recognize that. Sure, you can respond.
Thank you so much. So I think the point is, in fact, that it is prison, but it is when prison is combined with being forced to work in certain environments that it can lead to dangerous conditions. And so I think about...
You have no empirical evidence of that.
Actually, I think that I do. So another life of mine is...
We can all cherry pick. I mean, people who work get hurt sometimes.
Yes.
Whether you're in prison or you're out.
Yeah.
Okay?
So I agree. What I'm talking about, and I think is really important to remember, is that our incredible system of justice will sentence somebody to a certain number of years. But what they're not sentenced to is to lose a limb or to lose a finger, because they're working on defective equipment that isn't subject to the same rules, simply the location of a printing press, whether it's behind the wall or something that is out in the free world. Its location should not determine to what extent it is a regulated piece of equipment.
And you make a valid point, but I've read some of your writings and some of your work, and I just get the impression that you almost think we shouldn't have prisons. That people, there is no free will. That people don't choose to commit crimes, and then if they do, they shouldn't be held responsible for them. And I just don't think you're entitled to that opinion. It's America.
I don't think I've
you're
written
entitled
that anywhere.
to teach your kids that, but I just don't think I don't think most fair-minded Americans agree with you. And that's just my opinion. I'm happy to have this discussion. I thank my friend Senator Booker for calling it, but you all seem to forget the fact that we're talking about prison, folks. And people are in prison for a reason. And they're there. No, ma'am, Ms. Turner, I'm going to have my say. I understand the ACLU position. I'm glad you're not in charge, because we'd have a lot more people hurt in this country. Thank
I'd
you.
love to
Thank you.
continue the conversation with you,
Thank you
Senator
very much.
Kennedy.